I'll come back to the rest of our announcements, and I will go ahead. Kate, if you are ready, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you for the introduction of our presenters today.
Well, thank you so much, Hope. And I think you're going to make me the host so I can pull up their presentation. So while Hope's doing that, our two guests today are Mr. Alan Duncan, who is Vice Chair of the State Board of Education and is also our Piedmont Triad Regional Area Representative, and Catherin Truitt, who is, I think we can still say, the recently or newly elected State Superintendent of Public Education. A little bit about Mr. Duncan. He was the longtime chairman of the Guilford County Board of Education and joined the state board in May of 2018 after being named by Governor Cooper to fill the vacated 5th Educational District spot, which is our district. Duncan's a lawyer, and he also serves as a member of Governor Cooper's Commission on Access to a Sound Basic Public Education. He's a graduate from Davidson College and holds a law degree from Vanderbilt. Partner in the Greensboro law firm of Mullins, Duncan, Harrell, and Russell, and he's practiced for more than 30 years. State Superintendent Catherin Truitt, since her first days as a classroom teacher, has had students as her priority. Ensuring that students have an opportunity to receive the best education possible is a driving force in her day-to-day work. Truitt's service in education began as a high school English teacher, where she spent 10 years in the classroom. Yay, I'm a former high school English teacher. At the high school and middle school level. In 2012, Truitt joined the International Center for Leadership in Education, where she worked as a school turnaround coach with underperforming school districts. She collaborated with principals and superintendents to craft plans to close achievement gaps while developing whole district transformation initiatives. In 2015, Truitt was given the opportunity to apply her experience as a teacher and coach to help shape educational policy in North Carolina when Governor McCrory appointed her as a senior education advisor. Most recently, Truitt served as the chancellor for the nonprofit Western Governors University in North Carolina. Truitt is a 1994 graduate of the University of Maryland. She received her master's degree from the University of Washington, and she and her husband, Jeff, an attorney and captain in the U.S. Navy Reserves, live in Cary, where they have one daughter in college and a son and daughter enrolled in the Wake County Public Schools. So let me pull this up real quick, and I believe Mr. Duncan is going to start.
Okay, thank you very much. I do want to give a plug for Superintendent Gentry. I think being a superintendent of schools is the hardest job in any county, in any district. And so we are blessed to have many outstanding superintendents around the state who serve our children so well. And it's as I said, a tremendously difficult job in the best of circumstances. And these have not been the best of circumstances for the last year and a half. And so I want to particularly commend Superintendent Gentry for the wonderful job she's done for the students in Thomasville, as have so many superintendents around the state, and we are thankful for her. And then I'm going to pause. And Superintendent Truitt, do you have a timeline? Should I let you go first? Will that work better on your schedule?
I think it makes more sense for you to go first.
All right, well, I will go as quickly as I can because I know most people really are interested in hearing from you. So we can go to the next slide, please. So the State Board of Education is made up of members from 8 different districts. Then our Lieutenant Governor, our Treasurer, our State Treasurer, who is Dale Falwell from Winston-Salem, and our Lieutenant Governor is Mark Robinson from Greensboro. And then we have 3 other at-large members. It's a total of 13 members. We adopted a statewide strategic plan in August of 2019, and it's an important guide for the state board. Will not bore you with the details, but if you are interested, you can look at it on our website, and it has both the state board strategic plan and the framework for that plan. And that's got a lot of helpful information if that's a place of interest for you. Our vision is set out here, and I cannot stand when people read PowerPoints to me, so I'm not going to do that to you. The focus on both our vision and our mission is to serve children in this state. We want to be a child-centered state, and we are really not serving a good purpose if we do not focus on children in our state and everything we do in the area of education. Too many times adult issues get in the way of advancing our education endeavors for our children. And I think we need to constantly remind ourselves what's in the best interest of our children. Keep asking that question every time. Next slide, please. This is our goal overview, and this slide I think sets out for you the based on the strategic plan that we want to eliminate opportunity gaps between students by 2025. This was done in 2019, so that challenge is even more important because if nothing else, we know the pandemic has created enormous additional opportunity gaps for students, and we have a tremendous task ahead of us in order to get those gaps further closed and to make significant improvements by 2025. And this is an appropriate time to stop and pause and say, we are so blessed to have great educators in this state, and they have been tasked beyond description through this pandemic, doing both remote and in person. Our support workers have put themselves many times at risk during the period of the pandemic in order to serve our children, to make sure they're fed, to clean our buildings. So we owe an enormous debt of gratitude and thanks to our educators and all our support personnel. And I hope each of you will take the occasion, as was done earlier in this meeting, to thank our educators for what they do and to truly lift them up as real leaders in our community, because they are, after all, looking out for those who have the least. That is our children. We want to improve school and district performance by 2025 across the board, and with a real focus on looking at our poorest performing schools around the state and increasing their performance, and at the same time focusing on our accomplished schools throughout the state, because we want to have rigor at all levels for all of our students. And then last and very important is we will need to increase educator preparedness. Getting high quality educators is a challenge, and it's becoming more so of a challenge. There are a number of reasons for that. We could have a long discussion about that someday, but we need to recognize it's a challenge, and we need to change the dynamic. That's going to be part of what Superintendent Truitt has been very focused on and will likely mention as part of her presentation. Look at the next slide. The State Board Strategic Plan has two guiding principles. One of them is equity, and the other one is the whole child. The whole child resolution was passed by the board in November of 2016. Is for a whole school, that is a school that functions together and in coordination and as a team. Is for a whole community that supports their children and supports the education of our children. In fact, takes pride in the education of our children and works towards that goal so that the children within the community feel the support and the need for their educational accomplishments. And then our whole child, that's a healthy child. That's a well-rounded child. That's one that has both physical activity, also has challenging academic activity, and in fact is a child who has the opportunity to be fed, well-fed. We've taken that for granted too long. Again, we already had this issue, and we have been focused on it in schools, but the pandemic brought home just how severe the crisis is for feeding our children. Many children who already had that issue had it worsened during the pandemic, and then a number of children who had never had that issue, whose parents fell upon very difficult times, all of a sudden have that issue. Our children will not learn well if they are hungry. In fact, they won't learn well at all. So supporting their physical health and nutrition is extremely important. Our other touch point is an equity resolution that was passed by the board in September 2020. And I want to use a quick analogy that helps describe equity for me. It may not work for you, but it works for me. Picture children in the kindergarten age bracket, a child who's 5th or 6th grade moving into middle school, and a child who's a senior in high school. Take all three of those children and give them all the same size bicycle. Well, for at least two of those children, it's not going to work. It's either going to be too big or too small. For a third child, it might fit just right, but that's not going to work for then 2/3 of our children. So equity means, and it's been given a lot of different definitions. It does not mean equality. Equity means meeting the needs of our students where they are. And we have and should have an obligation and a sense of responsibility to meet our children where they are. Our children are not all the same. They are not widgets produced out of a factory. They are unique, precious human beings with very, very different backgrounds, very different strengths, very different weaknesses. And we have to recognize as we move forward in our educational system, the ability to adapt to meeting our children where they are, while at the same time making sure they have all the bases in their educational background that will allow them to succeed. And that's what we are very focused on supporting our children in doing. It will also help all of our districts to align and will support our response to the court case, which is called the Leandro decision, that requires that we provide a sound basic public education to all students. And finally, with the last slide, the State Board of Education strategic plan for the action framework, which is set out again on the website, but I will not spend time talking about. Let me just highlight 2 or 3 things here very quickly that are important. I've alluded to this before, but teacher preparation and teacher recruitment is incredibly important. We will succeed when we have high quality principals and high quality educators. We will succeed when we have those. That's an easy thing to say, but we have to support it in a meaningful way in which we accord tremendous professional respect to our teachers. We haven't done that, if we're honest. And we have to support our teachers, and we have to make it an attractive profession for those who have this gift. If you sit back, all of us can probably remember who our elementary school teachers were. Why do we remember that? Because they made an impact on our life. And they made a meaningful impact that sits with us still today. And so that's how important our teachers are. And that's how important they are to our children. So we need to support teacher recruitment and get some of the highest quality, some of the very best into the profession. That's what we need as a state. We need, just to touch on another one, we need to continue to develop our enhancements to career technical education. These enhancements include increased credentialing in a number of areas. We need workforce development tied to that. That is that we need to be productively working with our businesses to meet their needs. There are not every student is going to go to college. I think we recognize that. And we need to meet the needs of students who can be extraordinarily productive citizens in our society to make sure they have the training and certifications to go into professions. Right here in the Triad, there's enormous opportunities in aviation, for example. There are tremendous opportunities for things like metalworking. These are very high paying jobs. There are programs where you can get certification for HVAC, and when you get out of high school, you can qualify for jobs that make $45,000, $50,000 and up a year at age 18. We need to prepare our students who that's the track they want. We need to prepare our students so that they're ready to succeed on that track. So CTE enhancements are a very important part of the strategic plan framework and growth. I can go on, but it's important to stop and let Superintendent Truitt go forward with her plan, which is a very exciting plan. I thank you for your time, and I thank you in advance for your further support of public education. I know many of you have, but I ask that you continue to. It's so critical. Our kids need us more than ever. Thank you for your time today.
Well, thank you so much, Alan. It's a pleasure to follow you today, my partner in crime and friend on the State Board of Education. It is amazing to me the time and effort that our volunteer members of the State Board of Education give, and to have a place of board leadership is just a further testament to how committed our chair, Eric Davis, and vice chair of the state board, Alan Duncan, are to public education in North Carolina. It's an honor to serve alongside them. So thank you for the opportunity to present to you today. There is a lot going on in public education. There was a lot going on prior to the pandemic, and now there's an incredible amount of moving pieces that really start at the building level of a school and work their way out all the way up to the Department of Public Instruction, which I lead, and the State Board of Education. My North Star in this role, which I assumed on January 4th, is that every student deserves a highly qualified, excellent teacher in every classroom. I have a North Star because not only is it aspirational, but a North Star, if you know anything about navigation, keeps you on track wherever you are. And it's important to recognize that the relationship between the teacher and the student is actually the largest predictor of student success that we have. And so this need that we have to make sure that all students have an excellent teacher in every classroom, as Mr. Duncan said, is part of the commitment that we must make to students. Next slide, please. And so Operation Polaris is the playbook, you could call it, for what the agency is going to do to operationalize the State Board of Education's plan, as well as the Leandro recommendations. And this graphic illustrates what we are going to accomplish over the next 4 years. So you see at the center of this graphic, the Office of Learning Recovery. And if we go to the next slide, let's go to the next slide. And then the next slide. The Office of Learning Recovery and Acceleration is to work for you all may have been reading about just the massive amounts of dollars coming to us from the federal government for public education, and how there is in the latest round, the American Rescue Plan, a 20% requirement that districts spend this money on learning recovery. And so not only is the department given money, but our districts are given money. And this last round of money from the American Rescue Plan is about $3.5 billion. So this office is in place not only to ensure that as a state we are compliant with what the federal government has asked us to do with this money, but also to provide support to districts as they seek to find the best way to spend money on programs and policies and tools for staff and students that will ensure that students are able to not just recover from any learning loss, but accelerate their learning as well. And if you'll go to the next slide, they are going to work alongside the next band on that graphic, which is called the Office of District and School Transformation. Part of our charge at the department is to support our districts. And so while we have some very large districts who frequently, just don't need help from the Department of Public Instruction, 80% of our districts are small and rural and need help from the experts of the department, simply because they don't have the staff to do all of this work on their own. And so we want to be that guiding light for them, to provide technical assistance when we can, and help them support their students and teachers as much as possible. Next slide, please. So the Office of District and School Transformation gives us an opportunity to engage in our different educational regions through what's called a regional case manager model. It allows us to leverage data that we have in support of helping districts, and it allows us to actually put boots on the ground in our low performing schools to help provide an opportunity to transform education in a school and possibly in a whole district, such that needs of all children are being met. Next slide, please. So you'll notice back on that graphic that there are 4 satellites that surround that centerpiece of Office of Learning Recovery and District and School Transformation. So there are 4 things that working alongside the state board and the expertise on my team that we have decided that really need immediate change in North Carolina. And one of them is accountability and testing. Next slide, please. So right now we have an accountability system that is largely defined by what's called the school report card. And if you call up any school report card, what you'll see is a grade based on an algorithm that weights achievement and proficiency in reading and math, for example, at 80%, and the growth that a school makes at 20%. And we and others feel that this is not an adequate way to look at school quality, that there is so much more that goes into defining what makes a high quality school. So we have a work group right now that includes legislators and members of the State Board of Education and a multitude of other external stakeholders, including superintendents, to look at a better way of defining how we are accountable to the federal government and how we are accountable to the state. Next slide. Another satellite is student support services. And this group, which is led by Dr. Robert Taylor at the department, who's a former superintendent in a rural district, works to coordinate support services so that we can focus on those things that are aligned to the whole child work of the State Board of Education, which includes social emotional work, nutrition, school safety, and in particular with the pandemic, broadband connectivity. Next slide, please. So literacy is something that actually is plaguing not just our state, but our country as a whole for many reasons that we don't have time to go into here. But right now in North Carolina, 67% of our 8th graders are not reading proficiently when they start high school. And this statistic has not really changed since the 90s. We've been tracking this for some time now and really have not until now been able to do the root cause analysis necessary to look and say, why is that? Why are so many children not reading proficiently? Because this also trickles down into math. 67% of 8th graders are not proficient in math either when they start high school. And so what we have learned in our research is that, and from looking quite frankly at what a couple of other states have done, is to look at how we are teaching young children to learn to read. And what all research tells us is that we have not been training our teachers in methods of early literacy instruction that are grounded in what's known as the science of reading. And that is the body of research that tells us how the brain learns to read. And so, next slide, please. We will be working with our partners to train all pre-K through 5th grade teachers at state expense and using federal dollars as well, so that we can ensure that teachers have the training they need to be effective teachers of early literacy. So our human capital is a challenge that Vice Chair Duncan alluded to. And this is the idea that we do not have a highly qualified teacher in every classroom across the state because we have teacher shortages in pockets of our state. For example, in North Carolina, only 30% of students right now have a fully licensed math teacher. So there are certain subjects like secondary math, secondary science, and special education where we do have challenges in recruiting and retaining enough teachers. And so we are, we have formed a work group to re-envision the way we recruit, retain, and compensate teachers. Next slide, please. So Operation Polaris really, if it is going to work, must be aligned with the goals of the State Board of Education. We also need to be aligned with the opportunities that are in front of us, and federal funding from the federal government gives us a special opportunity right now to do this. But we also have to make sure that we are aligned with stakeholders, the governor's office, the General Assembly. And so we are committed to working alongside the State Board of Education to ensure that this alignment continues. You'll see here just some of the funding priorities that we are working alongside the board, as well as the governor's office and the legislature to ensure. Again, I won't read all of these things, but it is a significant amount of money, the likes of which we've never seen, even with, right, this is about 3 to 4 times the amount when between ESSER $1, $2, and $3 from the feds that we saw during the Great Recession and Race to the Top. So with that, I would love to take a few minutes to answer any questions that you may have.
Ms. Truitt, this is Bill Pless. I'm with Smart Start of Davidson County, and I'm hopeful that you get involved with Smart Start on a state level when you're talking about the Leandro case. I know most people on this call don't know what that is, but it was declared that you need a basic sound education. So I'm hoping you'll be open to partnering with the early childhood educators in our state and making sure they're as recognized and respected and as credentialed as everybody else in the public school systems, because that's a challenge. You talk about reading levels and everything of that nature. It starts 0 to 5, and I'm not going to start on that big long speech, but that's a very important part of getting y'all at the public school system level statewide where you need to be, is having a strong commitment and cooperation with Smart Start of North Carolina.
Yeah, so I'm thrilled to say that I communicate regularly with Amy Cubbage and attend Smart Start meetings, and we are advocating for universal pre-K. And we absolutely, I mean, I've been in a lot of districts this past month that are have integrated pre-K into the public schools, and they are seeing the fruits of that labor. In fact, we have research that shows that when science of reading and early literacy practices are employed correctly by teachers in pre-K, that 95% of students are reading by first grade proficiently. So couldn't agree with you more, and we look forward to continuing to advocate for more funding for our NC pre-K and 0 to 5 daycare centers.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And Catherin and Alan, it's not really a question. It's more of a comment, and it's pretty amazing that you guys kind of did a hard reset and developed a trajectory, because you know when something's not working, but it's really hard to stop what you're doing to invest the time needed to figure out how you need to do it differently. So I applaud, all the research, the time that's gone into that.
Catherin, Phil Griffin, first of all, thank you very much for coming today. But I was reading an article, there's several states that are already offering free community college tuition. And I know we talk about furthering the education of kids coming out of high school. Is that something that North Carolina has considered, or what's our look on something like that?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I believe the president is going to announce that this evening. So I have a lot of experience with this topic, having come from a in my previous role, the chancellor of a nonprofit online university that caters to adults, that really serves adults who are returning to school and frequently coming straight from community college. In North Carolina, we actually do offer free community college for a large portion of our citizens already. The College Career Promise allows for high school students to take community college courses while they are still in high school for free. And so students can graduate with a lot of credits before they even get to a post-secondary endeavor. And we also have over 100 early college high schools in our country, in our state, where students can enroll and attend and do a 5th year of high school and graduate with a 2-year degree also for free.
Wow.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing to be careful about with not with free community college, but any type of free the issue in higher education is cost. It's cost that has increased very disproportionate to income, and free college does nothing really to address the underlying cause, which is the cost of a 4-year degree. So I'm always skeptical of those kinds of things. But our community colleges are the jewel of our higher education system here and in that crown. And our community colleges are very inexpensive.
Thank you.
Okay, are there other questions for Catherin or Alan, either one? All right, wonderful. What a great presentation. Alan, appreciate, we see lots of applause out there. Your dedication, throughout the years, and Catherin, the job that you guys are doing, both of you are to be commended for the amount of heart and soul you're pouring into what you do. So again, we appreciate you sharing with us today. It's a rare opportunity to have people from your office present with us. So Kate Gentry, thank you so much for pulling this together and getting them in front of us today.
Well, and I want to say thank you to both. Mr. Duncan, I've gotten to know him pretty well, especially since last March 13th. We refer to that as the day that will live in infamy around here. But we started, the superintendents in our region started meeting every Thursday. And Mr. Duncan is our regional rep, and he has been right there with us, which has been just extraordinary. Those meetings have been extraordinary, and he's been extraordinary. And it's just been great to start to get to know Superintendent Truitt and have a very clear vision about where we're going and lots of very clear support, because to say, and I'll say this publicly, and you can put me on the record, to say we've been lacking that over the last few years is no understatement whatsoever. So I know we all kind of, after our first interaction with her, took a breath and said, okay, I think we're going to get what we need. So, and we're definitely getting that and more. And I look forward to getting to know her more. And I appreciate both of them taking their time today to come and talk to y'all, because I know, as evidenced by what you're doing with our schools this week, education is really important to this group. And it's so, so important to the town of Thomasville as well. So thank you all for letting them speak to you for a few minutes.
I'll just say the breath that Catherin and others took was a breath of fresh air, because having Catherin in this position as state superintendent has been great. She hit the ground running even before she took the oath of office. She was running full speed, way more than regular working hours days, and has continued that. And we have tried to work very closely together and have made a whole lot of progress in doing that. And so we're very fortunate to have her as our state superintendent, and we're very happy with that.
Well, it's the Mutual Admiration Society for sure. And my team and I couldn't do what we're doing without the support of board leadership. So thank you, Alan.
And Rotarians, I will, we heard a lot of information today, but it's amazing the way that we have a unique position and unique opportunities to plug in to some of the very issues that were talked about today. so that we're here as volunteers and as an organization that worldwide supports literacy, to know that it's an issue within our country, within our state, within our community, and to be more creative about the ways that we attempt to try to tackle some of those issues and help our educators tackle some of those issues. So I